Tenants are suing their New York City landlords after a fire destroyed their rent-controlled building, and the landlord had the audacity to remodel and make improvements to the building. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have another crazy story for you coming out of New York City. Now, obviously, this is a place that, landlords get treated like complete garbage, and it really takes a, big, strong landlord who knows the law very well up there to be able to operate and be able to make money. So in this situation, this landlord's building was actually, damaged in a fire, and they had to move all their tenants out of there so that they could remodel the place, make it livable again, and then hopefully the tenants be able to move back in, right? But the tenants are upset because the landlord is making improvements. They're remodeling the units. They have to change some of the floor layouts. And the reason they have to change the floor layouts is because the way that the building was before wasn't up to the modern day code. Okay, the building code requires them to make changes to the units, and the tenants are upset. Okay, they're like, oh, well, I had my unit had this much space and all that before, and now you're changing the layout. Listen, let the landlord do the repairs that are necessary, and they'll get back, maybe let you move back in afterwards. I don't know exactly how the law works. I think the article goes through a little bit more of what is required by the landlord, within the New York City laws. But this is a ridiculous situation where we have tenants who feel entitled to the building. They feel entitled to their low rents, and they feel like the landlord has no say whatsoever in what's going on with their property. And that's stupid, okay? That's stupid in my opinion, but it goes to show you the entitlement of tenants in these places that have rent control. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think, okay? I'm just curious, for those people who live in New York, do you live in a rent-controlled unit? And if you do, what is the rent that you're paying, okay? And if you own a rent-controlled building, what rents are you charging to your tenants? I'm just curious if the rents are that much below the market rate or not. Now, I've read lots of articles. I'm not personally a landlord there, but I'm just curious if it's possible to make good money as a rent-controlled landlord based on the rents that people are paying, or is it more just a appreciation play? I'm not sure what it is, but there has to be a reason why people keep investing there, other than the fact that they're from there. Okay. Anyway, let's get into this article. This article is coming from Gothamist.com, and it says, Brooklyn rent-stabilized tenants sue landlords for remodeling their apartments after a fire. Yeah, even the title doesn't sound right. So, rent-stabilized tenants, these are rent-controlled tenants, are suing their landlord for remodeling their apartments after a fire. Okay, their apartments are destroyed, and you're like, oh my God, you're remodeling. Anyway, let's get into the article and see what it says. Tenants of two rent-stabilized Brooklyn apartment buildings damaged by fires nearly a year ago are suing their landlords over allegations that the building owners are using the fire as an opportunity to reconfigure the homes, which the residents' attorneys claim is an effort to kick them out and potentially raise rents. Lawyers for the Legal Aid Society, who are representing 9 tenants across 2 buildings, one in Williamsburg and another in Sunset Park, say the landlords are illegally making changes to the unit layouts by circumventing the state agency charged with overseeing New York's rent-regulated housing stock. And here's a big problem right there, okay? The fact that these tenants, right, they feel that they are entitled to be able to come back after more than a year, okay? So this fire supposedly happened more than a year ago, and that's an unfortunate incident. It really is. It's not the fault of the tenants. It's also hopefully not the fault of the landlord, right? But this has been more than a year, and you're expecting to be able to come back in there and then get some sort of super cheap discounted rent, and you're suing the landlord because, hey, maybe things are changed in the building that was in a fire. Grow up. You're lucky that you got anything, and the government in New York City is just giving you a giant handout on the backs of these landlords. While tenants are temporarily living elsewhere or with friends and family, Their landlords plan to rearrange rooms inside the apartments and reduce the size of bedrooms and kitchens, said Nell Hirschman Levy, the supervising attorney in charge of Legal Aid's Housing Justice Unit. They're submitting plans to do so without authorization from DHCR, Division of Housing and Community Renewal. And in some cases, they're taking 3-bedroom apartments, 4-bedroom apartments, and reducing them to 1 or 2, Hirschman Levy said. And in others, they're moving kitchens and bathrooms around in the apartment, which takes away bedroom space. And the point is, they're not allowed to do that. So they're saying that, hey, they're not allowed to change the layout of the apartments. They're not allowed to make changes to the building, right? But, it says further down in this article, I'm going to get into it in a minute, that, hey, these landlords need to meet the building code, okay? And these are older buildings. That's the way most of these rent-stabilized buildings are old as dirt, right? And so when there's a fire, major property damage, they have to bring the building up to the present-day code. Okay, I know this because I actually had a fire in one of the houses that I lived in, and they had to go through and they had to bring all the electrical in the house. The house I was living in at the time was built in 1920, right? So they had to bring all the electrical, all of the, the things that were damaged within the house up to, the code for the year when that fire occurred, which I believe was in 2010. So, yeah, I mean, it is what it is, but you can't tell me that, hey, the apartment owners are doing this on purpose when you have one government agency telling you one thing and then another government agency telling you something else. State laws governing rent-regulated apartments require landlords to get approval from the DHCR before making material changes to the apartment, said Hirschman Levy. Instead, she said, the building owners are going to the city's Department of Buildings for construction approval permits. It's a loophole, she said, could lead to the displacement of low to moderate income tenants. These proposed changes, Hirschman Levy said, are designed to push long-term tenants to leave their rent-regulated apartments, which currently have rents well below the market rate. She said if the alterations no longer meet the family's needs or if the time it takes to restore the apartments drags out, landlords hope the tenants would move on. And they should, okay? I mean, we're already more than a year past when this building was damaged, right? And now I'm not saying that it's a good thing these people lost their homes, right? What I am saying is that these people need to grow the hell up, okay? If my house burned down a year ago and I need to go find somewhere else to live. That's just simply put a fact. I'm going to go buy a new house. I'm not going to sit around and wait for 2 or 3 years and, try to build a new house from the ground up. No, I mean, that's ridiculous. I'm going to go buy myself a house and go live in that, okay? Or rent another place and live in that. And that's what these people should do, okay? That's my opinion. Now, some people will be like, well, I want to rebuild my former home. Well, keep in mind, these people don't own the place. They don't own the place, okay? This is a rental for them. So only thing they're doing is they're trying to take advantage of the super cheap, low rents and then get a completely brand new remodeled apartment. That's stupid, okay? The landlord should be allowed to bring new tenants in there, cut their building up, do a complete gut remodel on a building that was damaged by fire. Even if it was a complete accident, we are talking about the entire building had to be gutted. So why are we trying to put these old tenants back in there at the old rental rates? It doesn't make any sense other than the fact that, hey, we're trying to give free handouts to people. See, that's the problem with these rent control laws. They create this sense of entitlement where, oh, I deserve low rents. I deserve to keep my apartment, with its big, kitchen and 5 bedrooms and only pay $500 a month, whatever. You don't deserve anything. Nobody, deserves anything, especially when we're talking about a property that somebody else owns. The attorney representing the owner of the Williamsburg apartment said the layout changes were necessary. Nora Ligurano, 66, and her husband, Marshall Reese, 67, along with their neighbors in the 4-story building, were forced to temporarily move out of their Williamsburg apartment after a fire broke out in the building next door last Thanksgiving. The couple, who moved into the first-floor apartment with a backyard more than 3 decades ago, has been subletting from a friend in Manhattan. Months after the fire, Ligurano and Reese discovered that their landlord submitted plans with the DOB to move one of the bedrooms to the middle of the apartment and shrink the kitchen. The kitchen is going to be a fifth of the size of what our kitchen was, said Ligorano, a book and paper conservator. It would service perhaps 2 college students who want to split the apartment. One lives on one side and one lives on the other. They can use the kitchen and bathroom in the middle, but we're not that, and we never were. So yeah, these people have been living in this place for 30 years. This is another issue that comes up with these rent-controlled tenants, right? They never want to leave. They want to stay in there forever. And in fact, if what I just read there said these aren't actually the tenants who were renting the place. They are subleasing it from another tenant who's moved on and lives somewhere else. So these, basically they're subleasing it. The person who is subleasing it from them is paying the super low rent, and then he's making profit off of this couple who's been subleasing it from him for the last 30 years. So yeah, you strip the profits away from the landlord, and then you allow the tenants to be able to make the money. And the tenants are nothing but de facto landlords, okay? And meanwhile, they're complaining. They're paying far below market rents. They're getting a complete remodel of the place. They might be allowed to move back in after the repairs are done, and they're complaining. This is, oh man, the sense of entitlement with these tenants is so bad. So I mean, this article is ridiculous. I think it's supposed to be drumming up sympathy for these tenants, but the only thing it does is makes me feel like these people are selfish, greedy, and stupid. Okay, that's the way I feel when I read this article. All they care about is themselves, and they don't face the reality that they need to move on because they are not entitled to these apartments. Okay, so I'm gonna go down here and I'm going to find what it says here from the landlord, right? It says, Marta Zalaga, an attorney for the owner of the Williamsburg apartment building, told the Gothamist that her client did nothing illegal and the proposed layout changes were to bring the 4-story building up to code. My client was advised by an architect that the building will have to be brought up to code and that the way to do that is to change the layouts due to inadequate light and air, Zaloga wrote in an email. So yeah, if these tenants are mad at anyone, they can go complain to the city because the city is the one who put those codes into place. The city is the one who demands that buildings, when they're rehabbed like this, they meet the current code, and there's nothing that the landlord can do to let them keep their place. So yeah, interesting article, but it just goes to show you just how entitled these tenants really can be.